You know what I tell folks is I say, look, TIP is the only non-avoidance treatment. And so if you want to live a non-avoidance lifestyle, I mean, that's what we do every single day. This young boy ate the equivalent of, he ate 3.5 bars. That's like almost 170 peanuts.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
You should have tons of hope. Look, we're have already demonstrated we can get people to remission. Our next phase is a cure.
Hi.
Hello,
And welcome to EpiPod.
Sarah is a mom to 2 little boys with food allergies.
And Danielle has navigated life-threatening allergies her entire life.
Living with an invisible health condition is so isolating.
The fear and the anxiety.
Trying to cover it up so you don't affect anybody else.
Especially your kids. Sound familiar?
Join us on the couch and take a load off with people who just get it.
We're so glad you're here.
Okay, we are back for part 2 of our question and answers with Dr. Randhawa, the founder of the Tolerance Induction Program at the Allergy Institute in Southern California. And I know we left you hanging last week, but we have so many more questions to get to.
We're gonna hop right on in.
I have a personal question.
Do it.
So, my son, Graham, it just reached milk freedom, the best day of my life, truly. Like, I hesitate to say that because I'm like, wait, the birth of my kids, like getting married. But like, you have to be an allergy person, parent, to understand like the relief to know that like my child is now safe, right? Around an allergen that is truly in everything. Like it controls our life, right?
Also, you worked so hard. Like you've given so much time and emotion to this that like, it's not only the best day of your life, but it's, of course, you're so proud of it because you worked harder at that than you probably have at anything.
True. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And just like giving your kid an allergen like you did every day, OIT, like it's so stressful to do that. But I also wasn't super stressed every single day because I do believe in the process. And I felt like, eating these foods that were biosimilar in the beginning before even getting to the allergic food made me feel like the body really was like primed and ready, Mm-hmm. So I do want to go into that a little bit in a minute, but what I was going to ask is, he's about 9 months, maybe, I'm hoping no more, away from graduation. And the last one we have is peanut. He's eating 8 peanuts a day right now, which is still amazing. I mean, reacted upon like dust particles before, right? And now he's eating 8 peanuts every day. 2 questions here. For peanuts specifically, and I got this in my DM, so I'm wanting to make sure I'm asking, why the high number? So when he graduates, I think he has to eat like what, 40 or 60 or something crazy, which sounds crazy to most people. No, just like to pass the challenge. I think it is though. I don't know. Everybody's plan is different. Okay. But
it's a lot.
To graduate, you have like a very large volume. So number 1, why is that? And number 2, talk about remission in general. Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of people are worried that like, okay, my kid's going to reach remission at 7, say my kid at 7 years old. What happens then in 5 years? Like if we do everything right, everything you're telling us, we do it right. But then he goes through, what's the word I'm looking for? Maturity? What is that
Puberty.
word? Puberty. Like, oh my gosh, my brain works there.
He goes through maturity.
He gets mature. He grows. What happens then? And also what like reactions are you seeing in remission, if any? Sorry, that was a lot of questions all at once. Can you remember those? Sorry.
I'm good. I think I got it.
Okay.
So maybe the first question first. Why do we need these large amounts of protein challenges? Like, what is the utility in that? Why do that? The answer is really going back to my experience in the adult space. Like again, I've had plenty of experience in adult food allergy. And when you look at kind of the amount of protein necessary to do 2 things. One is we have to clear a food, meaning like, hey, Graham might, want to eat or drink, half a glass of milk. He may want to drink a full glass of milk, but he may go somewhere and drink some crazy milkshake that has 4 times the amount of protein. We want to make sure he's fine across all levels of his diet. In the adult population, we had a pretty good idea of what that looked like based on their height and their weight and things of this nature. So I had to pull that data back and say, all right, what is a fair amount of challenge to clear foods and what's a fair amount of challenge to suppress this allergic response? That's really, really important. And then there's a third component. which is how do we then take a patient who's finished TIP and now in remission, and how do we get them to do this every 7 days, right? So now you eat this big, large amount of protein one day, you eat nothing the next 6, 7 days, and then on the 7th day, you go ahead and consume this large amount again. That is the ultimate training process of remission, right? Getting the immune system ready for that. It's critical to do that. And why do we do that? Because that's literally what every other human being does, right? You eat large, irregular amounts of protein throughout time. We don't eat the same exact thing every single day. We know that will change how your immune system operates, but you eat these kind of large, small, large, irregular amounts, and you're training your immune system to adapt. So basically, we gathered all that data and said, all right, yeah, so if somebody's going to finish peanut, we should do a equivalent of a 60 peanut challenge, roughly about 28 grams of protein. Now, does an adult ever really sit down and eat 60 peanuts in one sitting? I would challenge anybody to do that. It's not easy to do, right? But it's a threshold that gives us extreme confidence that never will a child react, if they can pass that challenge. Similarly, dairy, we do what is the equivalent of a 10-ounce challenge. It's hyper-concentrated milk, but it's 10-ounce equivalent of regular milk. Again, most people don't drink that much dairy in a single setting. So then what happens next in remission? The beautiful thing is that first year of remission is the testing ground. It's the training ground, getting that system to that once-a-week cycle. Basically, 99% of our patients at the end of year 1 of remission, we repeat their data, and their data looks amazing. So guess what? We now take that 7 days to 14 days. We then take 14 days to 21 days, 21 days to 30 days. That happens over the next few years. So by the time Graham is 10, 11 years old, he's on a once-a-month round of this bolus of food proteins. The rest of the time, he's eating like a non-allergic person. And the great thing is, he will never remember being allergic. So he will eat like all his friends. He will go, he's on a sports team. He's going to go have pizza on Friday. Everything is just very much normal. Have we ever seen a reaction in remission? I want to qualify that statement. After year 1 of remission, so let's talk the first year out of it, after the first year, have we ever seen a reaction? We will get potentially one report of a reaction, every 2 to 3 years. And it's almost always something that is mild. I mean, I'm talking like, okay, there was a hive or something happened. And almost always it's related to the fact they stopped eating their food for many, many months, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. Like, how did you stop eating? And so it's always the same kind of culprit. Usually it's like walnut. It's like a particular nut that they just don't want to eat. They don't like the taste of it. So they just literally stop eating it for 3 or 4 or 5 months. And then mom figures it out, says, hey, go eat this cup of walnuts, and then they'll get a hive. And that's rare, right? The rest of everybody's cruising along into remission. Past 5 years of remission, zero, absolutely zero we've ever heard back from families saying there's a problem. So remember, we track our data for a very long time. And the last thing I'd say is the first year of remission. Like I said, is a testing and training ground. Again, vast majority of patients, well over 95%, will never have a single issue the first year of remission. 5% of folks will potentially see some very mild symptoms. I'm talking itchy tongue, something of that nature. And the key thing there is if they see it, let us know. We are here to support you indefinitely. So, as long as you're in our program, we're going to get you to the finish line. So I'd say folks should have extreme confidence, once they hit remission, that things are going to keep cruising along. And my last piece of advice for any parent, including yourself, is once you hit remission, please, please, please just change your lifestyle. Go eat at places that you've never eaten before. Bring foods into the pantry and into the refrigerator that you've never had before. I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm still honestly shocked, just shocked, talking to families who are 5 years out, 10 years out, and they still kind of live a pseudo-restricted life. The kid's fine. They're eating everything. They don't care, but the families are still kind of like, I don't know, do you think it's fine? I said, what else do I need to tell you?
What did you do this for?
Your numbers are zero. Everything's great. And if you don't mind me saying, we just had a remission event, actually, just a few months back. We had 50 families show up, and we had not done a remission event like this before. So we had every allergen possible. All the nuts, pizza, milk, everything there. And it was the coolest thing because these kids all go there, they grab their, plate and they're going around. They just grab everything, sit down, they start eating, no hesitation. And I was like, took me back a little bit because I remember how severe these kids were. And it was like, well, this is really cool. And then we brought forward our maintenance bar, right? So this is a new product we're working on because I recognize that sometimes these foods just don't taste that good.
Yeah.
So we've got to find a way to disguise it, do it in a healthy way. And so we have this new peanut maintenance bar that doesn't really taste like peanuts, quite amazing. And so this young boy ate the equivalent of, he ate 3.5 bars. That's like almost 170 peanuts.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not kidding.
That's
170
crazy.
peanuts. And his mom comes up to me and is like, is he going to be okay? And I was like, yeah, he's going to be just fine.
Yeah.
I said, you've been in remission for 8 or 9 years. He's just fine.
Which
Wow.
which again, I feel like brings us back to kind of what we started with, that like the difference in OIT and TIP, that like TIP is almost like reprogramming the immune system. Like it's totally changing it. It's not trying to trick it or like, make it.
It's not a Band-Aid.
Yes, it feels a little more. Again, I know you can't use the word cure in in that kind of permanent way, but it feels more permanent.
Right. OIT felt like an everyday medicine with a lot of rules around it.
Yeah.
And TIP, okay, not using the word cure, but like it's almost like you had like a wound that you had to get sutured, and
Yeah.
it's not the same as it was, but like
The scar is
you're good.
healed.
You can
Yeah.
go run. You're fixed. You can go.
You know what I tell folks is I say, look, TIP is the only non-avoidance treatment because
Yeah.
if you're on OIT, you're still in avoidance.
Mm-hmm.
If you're taking Xolair, you're still in avoidance. And so if you want to live a non-avoidance lifestyle, I mean, that's what we do every single day.
We want to take a minute now to tell you a little bit about a brand that we really love, Pulse Power, a high-protein, all-natural chickpea-based snack line that is co-founded by an allergy mom.
They have delicious snack sticks and chickpea spreads that are made in a dedicated top 14 allergen-free facility.
A great choice for school lunches and snack boxes.
Can you talk something that I get questions about and I think about myself? Maybe tip or for your female patients, especially the ones that are post-pubescent. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Post-mature.
There you go.
As well as just like the immune system in general. Something that I struggled with OIT, actually I didn't, but I was warned about it and it was always caused a lot of anxiety, is when a female is menstruating. Their immune system is a little wacky and it could make OIT a little bit more freaky deaky. A lot of these adults who write in, they're like, I think maybe it's because after my pregnancy, I now am anaphylactic to XYZ. So obviously it's like the immune system and the female body with hormones, with babies, with menstruating, like there's obviously something there. Can you talk about that in general, but also you're saying you have some patients, women in their 25 and under. So obviously that's a full grown woman. How do you all approach that at TIP, and any information about that in the immune system?
That's an excellent question. So the beauty of doing this highly patient-specific form of treatment, right? I mean, it's about as fine-tuned as it gets. Mm-hmm. Everyone has literally their exact, kind of own microcosm of their system. We look at not just the data; we're actually looking at other factors. So, do you have autoimmune risk factors? Do you have, puberty, components that could be there? Do you have any other type of immune disorder? Like, the list can be quite long. Any lung problems, any skin problems. So we're looking at all those factors as the AI designs this type of therapeutic model. And I think with that, we've made extreme progress, right? So if you look at the last 5 years, we've had no significant cases where a progesterone type level of exposure, so this includes menstruation, includes pregnancy, has resulted in a significant symptom or significant stoppage of the program, and really just doesn't have very many symptoms. Another interesting thing is the use of NSAIDs, right? So, aspirin, not aspirin, not going to take that, but Motrin, ibuprofen, things of that nature. If you take too much of those medications, especially during, menstruation, and you then add on food proteins, that can also be a volatile cocktail that can be a problem. So I think this is why, again, I really believe that you have to respect the way the immune system operates. It's got huge levels of complexity. It takes data science to solve those problems. I don't think a single pill or a single approach will ever kind of solve the problem. And that's been reflective of the last 100 years of allergy-based treatment.
You come in at these visits and you're testing, doing these challenges, and then exercising for 5 minutes. Talk a little bit about that, because I think that, in a lot of ways that is opposite of what, we hear exercise as a cofactor, right? Like, why are you trying to induce a reaction there in the clinic? Why are you trying to raise the heart rate and do those sort of tests? And how does that actually protect a patient in the future?
Yeah, no, it's again a great question. So again, remember, I'm an ICU guy, so I'm going to look at things, I think through a different lens. We're looking at trying to solve this problem across multiple organ systems. So as patients come into the program, we also check their lung function. We're looking at other organ systems plus all the data. So there's kind of two trajectories going through TIP simultaneously. One is a data model, right? So all those gummies that you took, all the doses that you took, those are all forecasted, and we could literally forecast every single dose for the next couple of years from day one. And the interesting thing is, a lot of parents don't know this, but we're using that data and process to adjust those doses up or down based on what's going on the data. So if, say, for example, somebody has skipped a bunch of doses, adjustments will be made utilizing the analytics. And the parents don't even know. They're like, I just went to my next visit. But no, actually, all the adjustments were made for you. You're just not aware. You come back and get your annual blood draw. Further adjustments are made, and the parents are just not aware. Like, I'm just going to finish up my visits and things are going well. So it's a very nice kind of guardian angel model that's kind of following over the data to make sure things are fine. And then on the clinical side, we have to now make sure that all of this data is equal to what the clinical outcome should be. So that means you should be able to pass very predicted food challenges. And to us, passing a food challenge means that under the highest amount of stress, that your system is not going to react to this protein set. So what we do is we, as you mentioned, exercise patients. Now, if you're an older patient, we get you to really exercise hard. We will push, we're trying to get you up to 180 beats per minute. You're going to do it for about 8 to 10 minutes, and that's a critical element. Younger kids, we can only push them so far. Typically 5 to 7 minutes is good enough, but again, a very high heart rate. When a patient passes that exercise threshold, if you look at our data, the chance of them ever having a symptom now again to that particular protein drops well under 1%. Wow. So it's an excellent kind of clearance model for us, and we do this across every single protein all the way to the finish line, including remission visits.
Yeah. And is the reason you can treat pretty much any allergen because it's not necessarily even about that allergen. It's about the process of creating tolerance in the immune system?
I'd say both. One aspect is biosimilar protein. So if there's an allergen that pops up, again, I think we've seen them all now, but maybe there's a rare nut in South America that no one's heard of. I'm sure we'll get surprised one day, but literally we spent a lot of work in our laboratory understanding, defining these biosimilar proteins. So having biosimilars is key to getting patients to the finish line. I think that's kind of very, very important concept to understand. But ultimately, you brought up a great point. Once we start creating momentum, right? So the momentum of tolerance is truly a momentum issue, meaning we're going to start, making peanut go into tolerance, milk is going into tolerance, tree nuts are going into tolerance. Then that becomes a momentum process, which means the highest immune cells, typically T cells, are now saying, you know what, something's changing here and we're good with it. So we're going to start changing the way we act and communicate. And then what you see is year after year in remission, those numbers plummet. And again, many of them will hit a hard zero.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Do you have one more?
Yeah, I do. Do it. And this can be super quick. Can people with EOE or with FPIES, I have a lot of people that comment, like, I don't think we'd be able to do that program. Are they able to do it? Is it trickier? And is there any way that doing TIP could actually bring any of those conditions on?
Yeah. Again, I have always had an open door policy, right? Like we take all cases, and I think what that's done for us is over 2/3 of our cases are very complicated cases. I mean, like we don't get a lot of easy ones, unfortunately, but it also makes us very good at what we do, and so if it's EOE, FPIES, patients with Crohn's disease, other inflammatory bowel disease, patients who have different autoimmune conditions. We have literally now multiple patients who've undergone transplants, like literally liver transplants and things. and now they're coming in for treatment. So we are experts in our space. We have a lot of other specialties represented within our organization as well. So we're going to be very careful and cautious. But yeah, I would say the only people that we don't treat are those who are not anaphylactic, right? So, we don't get hardly any of them anymore. Occasionally they would come in and they would test totally negative. Our data would say it's negative. We would turn them around and just say, go back and, talk to your local allergist and just, challenge your foods out.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. You had another question,
Yeah.
and then
obviously, like, devil's advocate, like, this is so helpful. I'm so excited for every parent listening who has the means to, and time and all of the things. But obviously, like, there are the naysayers. Like, you were approached by an actual board certified allergist at the DC Fair conference, or the different things. Like, there are naysayers and there are patients where it's not a fit. And that's like all on a spectrum. Just like I wasn't a fit for OIT. I'm obsessed with my allergist. I'm obsessed with that whole clinic and that whole practice, but it was not a fit for me. Who would this not be a fit for? Or like the people who are like, actually, this is a no for me. Why was that a no for them?
Maybe I'll answer or answer both the comments, right? So, like, again, we are the leaders in a space, and not just within allergy, but within, medicine. So I would ask allergists on a pretty regular basis now, if they ask us questions or they seem to just, kind of question all that we're doing, I would say, look, we're under huge regulation. I mean, we're a highly regulated organization, meaning that patients are regulated. So they are reported up to a system through IRBs that reports to the FDA. No practice does that, right? So we've been doing this for a very long time, and our record speaks for itself. And you're looking at thousands of patients who've hit remission. So either, if you're doubting what we're saying, you either think we are doing something dangerous, or you think we're treating non-allergic people. And I would ask any parent who's been in TIP, tell me that your kid's not allergic. I mean, this is just the reality of what it is. And usually when I pose the questions to an allergist like that, they just simply kind of don't have anything to say.
Right, yeah.
And then I tell them, hey, look, why don't you come learn about what we're doing? Because I think you'll be quite impressed, and you should look at this form of immunotherapy as something truly innovative. Really, this is revolutionary, and it has major implications towards other conditions. So that's really kind of the first side of that question. And I have to also say, I do believe in the last 5 years, the number of allergists who've kind of had a negative perspective of us is just plummeted. I mean, we have a lot more people who are like, hey man, this is cool, tell us more, we'd love to be a part of it. And our job now is to see, can we create a model that gets this product out to the allergists and just make it easier for families to get there. In regards to your question about who's not a good fit potentially, again, if they have anaphylaxis and we feel that they are safe, meaning from a mental health perspective, they're safe, then we will take any and all comers. We have no concerns about that. Are there any cases that we cannot simply get to the finish line, right? Like those types of cases. We do have a dropout rate. It's about 0.2%, something of that nature. Very few patients. Most often the dropout rate is due to a child, typically a very young child, who just doesn't consume foods very well. So, they're picky eaters. And the interesting thing there is we don't really drop them out. We kind of put them on a pause. We still call it a dropout, but we put them on a pause, check back with them in 6 months. They usually come right back and we're rolling again.
Nice.
The second most common cause is generally financial, as far as travel. There's things happen. But you mentioned something about income and things of this nature. We've done demographic dives into our patient population. Our average patient is still kind of your 1.5 income Costco member. They will fly, drive, whatever it takes, plan accordingly. And we've worked very hard to build a lot of grants, a lot of support mechanisms through a nonprofit to make sure that we give them the access they need, and they keep coming here on a regular basis, and we love having them. Yeah. So I think overall, all I can tell you is I've given my life to this field, and so we are fully committed. And so any patient who comes in, we won't quit, we won't stop. If they tell us to stop, obviously, then that's their decision. But really, we will get every single patient to the finish line.
Thank you so much for that, because I felt really protective over Sarah when that happened. And I know that wasn't the first time that happened to you.
Yeah.
And for any TIP parents listening who have had naysayers when it's like somebody who the program wasn't for, all the way up to an allergist that they've never met before, but they're like, I'm a board certified allergist. I'm like, you're bullying them. Like, just send them the link to that. We'll give you a soundbite to send to them, because you're already under so much doing the program, being an allergy mom, keeping your kids safe. And now you have these bullies. I'm like, hello. So thank you so much for speaking to that, because that really makes a lot of sense.
Not being afraid to answer the question.
Yeah.
I think so often it's like, well, why aren't people answering this question or that question? It's like, well, you are. You're on this podcast. You're talking to people. You're answering these questions. You're inviting allergists in. And so at some point, it's like, what more can you do? You know. So I appreciate you not being afraid or sidestepping the question, especially from my journalism background. You hear all these politicians. You ask them questions, and they answer the question with like a non-answer, and you're like, well, that you didn't even answer the question. So thank you for doing that. Last question. Yes. Because we've been talking a long time. But what hope can you provide for allergy parents, whether they're in your program or not? What does the future look like in terms of treatments and cures for this horrible disease that honestly affects every single part of our lives as people with allergies?
Well, I think the first thing is more and more awareness is being developed for this condition, which is really important. I mean, 20 years ago when I started this work, I was honestly pretty amazed at how little awareness was out there. And like I tell folks, look, I don't have food allergies. My kids don't have food allergies. I don't have it very close to me, but hey, now I got 16,000 kids, who have food allergies, right? This is just one of those things that I put it on my back, and I advocate hard. And in fact, we've done that through our nonprofit as well. We've done a big push creating anaphylaxis training programs, which did not exist before. Over the last few years, got approved at the state level in California, and we've now trained up, I think, something like 60 to 70 different restaurants and golf courses and places. Just say, look, if you know how to use an AED for defibrillation, you should know how to use an EpiPen and recognize allergic responses. So I think advocacy is growing, and that's a real big win. I think what you guys are doing here as well is just a great form of advocacy, and I say thank you and keep it up. As far as treatment is concerned, before I go into treatment, I'd say the next step is diagnosis. I think all too often you hate to be the person who just suddenly has a reaction, and that happens, unfortunately, right? You're like, I can't believe this is happening, right? I mean, I had no clue this was coming. So diagnosis has to improve, and how's it going to get there? Well, it comes by getting and building better tests, and so I do see in the next 4 or 5 years a different level of testing that is just much more accurate, much easier to understand. And this is something that I think we're going to play a big role in, but I also feel like this can extrapolate to general pediatricians, general internal medicine doctors, allergists as well. So giving people accurate diagnosis is to me a hope, because once you know what you're dealing with, at least you can take that next step.
True.
And then finally, as far as treatment goes, obviously I believe what we're doing is cutting edge, but I'd say as a whole, there are more and more people in the space, which is great. That's a win. I think my main hope is individuals look at life science research and respect the complexity. So don't look for a single solution, a single pill. Let's move on past that. I believe we're kind of setting that tone, and I hope more will follow. And I'd say the last thing I'd say is you should have tons of hope. Look, we have already demonstrated we can get people to remission. Our next phase is a cure, and what a cure means to me is taking the EpiPen and never ever having to renew that prescription again. I mentioned this remission event I had. Again, 50 plus families there, and I asked just show of hands. Tell me how many of you guys are carrying EpiPens right now, and none of them raised their hands. Now,
my God,
we don't tell them to do that, right? But they are so just normal as far as kind of this non-allergic lifestyle. They don't do that. So we've done our work in our research laboratory, and it's showing us that an off switch is near, right? We can see it. We now just have to conduct the next set of trials and research to prove it. Fingers crossed, we might be able to do that in just a couple of years. And if we can start to demonstrate that, then man, you could take Graham and say, hey, you're in year 3 of remission. You hit the off switch. Thank you very much. You're done.
Wow. That's good. I have full body chills.
Same. Yeah.
As somebody who has lived this their entire life and who could say hope is as low as my anxiety is high, that really means a lot. So thank you.
Yeah.
When you start accepting 33, I just had my 33rd birthday and above, I am first in line. I will be your guinea pig. And I just really can't thank you enough for what you do, what your team does, and honestly, what you've done for my friend.
Oh, yeah. And it really is, before you go, I just want to thank you personally for the research, the dedication that you have, poured your life into this in order to help families like mine. And it's not just helped my family, it has I feel like we've been born again.
Totally.
Like we are truly entering the next chapter of our lives. And I'm so excited for him to not remember allergies, right? Like I have worked my butt off, even with allergies, to make sure that he's lived a wonderful, full life. But I then carry that burden. And so this is for him, but it's also for me, and it's for our entire family. And I'm so grateful that we have been able to do it and that it's working. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
No, listen, thank you both for the kind words, and maybe I'll just leave you with what I call the ultimate victory. I was just in New York a couple weeks ago, and I meet all these families, and I find it fascinating. They're done with the program. They're several years into remission, but they will always talk about what they did in this program, what the program did for them, this team effort, the unity that got this done to get this victory. And they're out 10 years and they're still talking about it. And I often wonder, I'm like, wow, that's fascinating that it's so imprinted in them, but it shows you how meaningful this is, right? To have ultimately given your child the true gift of food freedom, not just for the next few years, but for an entire lifetime. Yeah. So, like I said, it's folks like yourselves who keep me motivated, and we'll keep it going.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Freedom is the best way to describe it. I feel so much freer. So, yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Randhawa, and I hope this helps a lot of people to better understand the program, to be able to consider it, and to have hope for the future.
I'm so thankful for your time.
Thanks, guys.
Oh my gosh.
I don't see him as this mythical person anymore. I feel like he really addressed the questions, offered so much nuance and perspective to things that I get asked all the time, and just, being able to thank him though too, for everything, especially just recently that we've achieved, telling him thank you for even just dedicating his life to this. That was really special for me.
I think I just have lived in this world. I know no different. And I live in this bubble where it's just you see other health conditions or other people getting, there's transplants if you need a new kidney, there's this, that, and the other, there's treatment for really serious diseases. And then my unseen one that it can go under the radar, I'm just there's no hope. I live in this bubble of no hope. I can try to slap a Band-Aid on it with different things, or a little hope that maybe one day my body will magically change. The immune system changes every 5 to 7 years. Maybe one day I'll just be healed. But that's to hear that somebody has dedicated their life, like you said, that somebody is 20 years into doing this, that somebody is 20 years into the future.
Yeah.
Using AI for 20 years, using less than 1% error rates for 20 years. This is crazy.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a really good reality check for me to be just because you are still living, eating the same 10 things like you pointed out, I was holy cow, you're calling me out. But just because this is your reality doesn't mean it necessarily will always be your reality.
Yeah.
And I always think about if I have kids one day, what if this is their luck of the draw too? Do I really want to create this for somebody else? I don't know. That's just a scary thing. And I'm sure as a parent, you can think of 1,000 different things. What would happen to my kid one day?
Yeah.
But I think about it all the time. And just to know that help is on the way. And it's not just we're the future is, when we had the Zoller episode, he said in my professional lifetime.
Yeah.
Well, that he was a young guy. That could be 30, 40 years. This person has been, help is on the way 20 years ago.
Yep.
And that's so encouraging.
Yeah. And I really think you kept bringing up the naysayers, and I'm glad, because I think because the program is something different. Like he said, it's not necessarily new. It's just different than anything else out there. And so of course there's going to be people who question it, and for good reason. We should question everything. Like we should question the people, the politicians that we love. We should go to them and question everything, all the time. I know that's coming from my journalism background, but like, I just think it's so important that we don't just blindly trust anyone or anything.
Totally. But there's a difference between that and approaching a mom who was being an advocate in DC and like taking away what little she's holding on to left. Like she has such a full plate and holding on to this one thing. And you're like, let me take that out of your hands and stomp on it. That's different. Yeah. I'm still, that was months ago. I know. And I'm like ready to punch this lady.
I know. I don't even think we shared that on this episode. People are probably like, what? But yeah, I mean, just somebody basically, shitting on my like decision to do tip. Yeah,
totally. And it's not the first time. And I know that other tip parents have experienced the same thing.
Right.
So anyway. I love that. Well, here's the other side of the coin then, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm so hopeful, and I hope everybody listening feels the same way.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. Thank you for just being a part of this community. And after we turned off the cameras and after we stopped recording, we were talking about just the need for community and the need for advocacy and the need for us to keep talking about it and keep supporting one another. And so just know that it really means the world that you guys are a part of that.
Yeah.
And the providers know that that's a need too.
Yeah.
And just wanted to encourage, they were like, you guys should keep going. Like people need this. And we're like, we will.
Thank you.
Yeah, we will be here as long as you guys are here.
Yes. All right. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.